So this is the module 3 missed topics. So let me just find the page. So first missed topic is setting maximum and minimum dimensions. Find that page here. Okay, so this is a part of working with width and height. So you can set limits on the width or height of a block element by applying the following properties. So min-width, colon, space value, semicolon. Min-height. So after I say semicolon, there's going to be a new line that's, I'm not going to say, because just like every other language. So the first one, min-width, colon, space value, semicolon. Then min-height, colon, space value, semicolon. Then max-width, colon, space value, semicolon. Then max-height, colon, space value, semicolon. So where value is once again a length expressed in one of the CSS units of measure, usually pixels, to match the measurement unit of the display device. For example, the following style rule sets the width of the page body to 95% of the browser window width, but confined within a range of 640 to 1680 pixels. For example, the following style rule sets the width of the page body to 95% of the browser window width, but confined within a range of 640 to 1680 pixels. So body. So this is code here. Body, open a block, then width, colon, space, 95%, semicolon. Then width. So body, open a block, then width, colon, space, 95%, semicolon, new line. Min-width, colon, space, 640px, semicolon, new line. Max-width, colon, space, 680px, semicolon. So maximum and minimum widths are often used to make page text easier to read. Studies have shown that lines of text that are too wide are too difficult to read because the eye has to scan across a long section of content, and that lines of text that are too narrow with too many lines returns. Okay, so let me read that again. So maximum and minimum widths are often used to make page text easier to read. Studies have shown that lines of text that are too wide or too difficult to read because the eye has to scan across long sections of text and that lines of text that are too narrow with too many line returns break the flow of material. Okay, so there's a reference here. Setting the widths and heights. To set the widths and height of an element, use the styles. So width, colon, space value, semicolon, height, colon, space value, semicolon. The value is the width or height in one of the CSS units of measurement, or a percentage of the width or height of the parent element. To set the minimum possible width or height, use the styles. Min-width, colon, space value, semicolon, and min-width, colon, space value, semicolon. To set the maximum possible width or height, use the styles max.width, colon, space value, semicolon, then max-height, colon, space value, semicolon. So set the width of the page body for the Fantasia Chocolate's homepage to 95% of the browser window ranging from 640 pixels to 960 pixels, and display the company logo image as a block with its width set to 100% so that it extends across the page body. You do not have to set the height of the logo because the browser will automatically scale the height to keep the original properties of the proportions of the image. So set the width of the page body for the Fantasia Chocolate's homepage at 95% of the browser window ranging from 640 pixels to 960 pixels. Also display the company logo image as a block with its width set to 100% so that it extends across the page body. You do not have to set the height of the logo because the browser will automatically scale the height to keep the original proportions of the image. So there's a tutorial here. Not sure if you've already done this one, probably not, because I think you only did up to chapter 2. So we'll come back and do those. So now it's intro to grid layouts. Looking for that one. It seems like a lot of this stuff is just like code, understanding the code, but you still need to find the answers to the book and all that. Practice tests, if you can, if you are able to find it. I don't know if you can still find it or not, but try to find it on the website. Okay, so I'm looking for intro. It's okay. Just doing some of these code examples, you're gonna need something to hold the book, or unless you pull this up on your. Actually, no, you won't be able to pull this up on your laptop. Unless you took like a picture of it or something. Okay, I'm still looking here. this is, it's just a little tiny thing for introducing grid layouts. It's just a little paragraph here, so introducing grid layouts. In the previous session, you used the float property to lay out a page in sections. That floated alongside each other. Okay, I can't see because the shadow of the light. Introducing grid layouts. Let me just start again. So in the previous session, you used the float property to lay out a page in sections that floated alongside each other like columns. In this section, you'll explore how to generalize this technique by creating a page layout based on a grid. Okay, so that's it. Now introducing CSS grids. Everything else is in the notes, so there's a long set of notes, so there's that one was. So now I'm looking for introducing CSS grids somewhere. Oops, sorry, skip the page here somewhere. CSS, this is it here. CSS, no it's not, this is... Why wasn't it? Let's see, somewhere around here. Okay, there's a lot of code to do here, which is okay. But, I mean, if you do the code, at least you'll know what's happening. So. I don't see it here. Yeah, these don't look, I don't think I've done these yet, so I'll come back and do these. We'll have to look at the last recorded video, see where that was, start from there, and then we'll go from there. I'll have to delete those extra 5 videos that I uploaded to my YouTube page. Introducing CSS grids, okay, right here. Is this it here? Let me check if they put this in the notes. Sure. Let's see. It seemed like it just skipped over all this stuff, so or it's just on a different page. Positioning objects. There's that. Okay, there must be other using CSS grids. Do this quite a bit for this one, so let's see here. 3 pages. Okay, so grids are effective. Let's have a set my water here. Introducing CSS grids. Grids are a fast and flexible way of creating a layout, but they are not without their problems. Most always problem is that setting up a grid increases the size and complexity of the HTML code by adding another level of markup. Another equally serious complexity of the HTML code by adding another level. Another equally serious position is that, another equally serious problem is that grids undermine the fundamental rule that the HTML file should consist solely of informational content. Well, all instructions. Grading presentation should be placed within an external style sheet. However, under the HTML grid system, the div elements have no purpose other than for it defining how the page should be rendered. Okay. If the designer wants to change the layout of the HTML file and the style sheet, they both have to be modified, adding another layer of complexity to the site design. Defining a CSS grid. Since grids are an important and useful design tool, this is defining a CSS grid, so this is still part of it. Since grids are an important and useful design tool, the W3C is working toward adding grid styles to CSS to create a grid display without the use of div elements. CSS is now adding the following grid-based properties to its selector. This is called selector, open a block, display column space grid semicolon, then grid dash template dash rows column space track dash list semicolon, then grid dash template dash column space colon space track dash list semicolon, close the block. So I guess that's the general format. So the grid keyword for the display property establishes that the selected elements will be displayed as a grid. So the grid keyword for the display property establishes that the selected elements will be displayed as a grid. The number of rows and columns in the grid are set by the grid-template-rows and grid-template-columns properties, where track-list is a space-separated list of row heights or column widths. Heights and widths can be expressed in any of the CSS units of measurements, including the keyword auto, where the row or column will be automatically sized according to its content. For example, the following style row establishes a grid for the section element. The grid consists of 3 rows, with the height of the first and last row set to 100 pixels. With a row automatically sized to match its content. The grid also consists of 3 columns, with the first and last column that's set to 25% and the middle column occupying half of each grid row. So, code is section, open a block, display column, so the code is section, open a block, then display colon space grid semicolon grid dash template dash rows colon space 100px space auto space 100px semicolon. Then grid dash template dash columns colon space 255 space 50% space 25% semicolon, close the block. The CSS grid styles also introduce the FR unit, which represents the fraction of available space left on the grid after all other rows or columns have attained their maximum available size. For example, the following style creates 4 columns. 2 columns first are 200 and 2 columns that are 200 and 250 pixels wide respectively, and then 2 columns that are 16 and 26 respectively. Sorry, 1 FR and 2 FR respectively. So for example, the following style creates 4 columns. 2 columns that are 200 and 250 pixels wide respectively, and then 2 columns that are 1 FR and 2 FR respectively. So grid dash template dash columns colon space 200px space 250px space 1 FR space 2 FR. The FR unit can be thought of as a share of the available space, so that in this example, after 450 pixels have been given to the first 2 columns, whatever space remains is divided between the last 2 columns, with 1 FR or 1/3 allotted to the 3rd column and 2 FR or 2/3 to the 4th column. I'm not sure if there's assigning content to grid cells in the notes, but let me have a look. think there was something in the notes. Okay. Jesus, great. Okay. Okay, so there is not really relative, so you need positioning objects. So we can skip that crap, which actually looks like, it just looks like crap. But maybe once you see it in action, it would be more easier to understand. I never really liked grids, to be honest. I found them confusing. Like when I tried to do it in Java and Android. Kinda had a problem with it. I'd rather go with anchored pane or something. Okay, so now they have something else. Okay, so now what we need actually is positioning objects. Okay, so positioning objects, so everything here, this is the last of everything. It looks like the last part. There's a ton of shit. So it's positioning objects. In the last session, you developed a layout in which page objects were strictly aligned according to the rows and columns of a grid. So what they're doing here is this is like a layout, right? So it's like how you want to lay something out on a page, how it's going to look. So it says, while a grid layout gives a page a feeling of uniformity and structure, it does limit your freedom to place objects at different locations within the page. During the session, we'll explore how to break out of the grid using the CSS positioning styles. Okay, so CSS positioning styles, I think I'd honestly rather go with this, but so the CSS positioning styles. CSS supports several properties to place objects at specific coordinates within the page or within their container. To place an element at a specific position with its container, you use the following style properties. So, position, colon space type, semicolon, top, colon space value, semicolon, right, colon space value, semicolon, bottom, colon space value, semicolon, left, colon space value, semicolon. So that's what they are. So you've seen these somewhere else. Where type indicates the kind of, so they keep showing you the type in the general notation. They keep showing you type and value. So it says where type indicates the kind of positioning applied to the element. So where type indicates the kind of positioning applied to the element, and the top, right, bottom, and left properties indicate the coordinates of the top, right, bottom, and left edges of the element. Where type indicates the kind of positioning applied to the element. Where type indicates the kind of position. Type indicates. Okay, so again, this is like a function. You're just plugging in the values. Where type indicates the kind of positioning applied to the element. Where type indicates the kind of position. Back to the element, okay. And top, right, bottom, and left properties indicate the coordinates of the top, right, bottom, and left edges. Of the element. Effectively, the coordinates can be expressed in any of the CSS measuring units or as a percentage of the container's width or height. So CSS supports 5 kind of positioning: static. CSS supports 5 kind of positioning. So those are static, which is the default, then relative, then absolute, then fixed, and then inherit. So in static positioning, the element is placed where it would have fallen naturally within the flow of the document. Okay, so this makes sense, I guess. This is essentially the same as not using any positioning cells at all. So this is like wherever it fits or whatever the page just throws it on. So browsers ignore any values specified for the top, left, bottom, right properties under static position. Okay, so the next one was after static. Then there's relative. So relative positioning is how that rest of my drink here. Relative positioning. Relative positioning is used to nudge an element out of its normal position in the document flow. Under relative positioning, the top, right, bottom. The top, right, bottom, and left properties indicate that extra space is placed alongside the element as it is shifted into a new position. For example, the following style will add 250 pixels of space to the top of the element and 450 pixels to the left of the element, resulting in the element being shifted down and to the right. So I think when it goes like, so here's the code here, div, open a block, and then says position, colon, space, relative, semicolon. Then top, colon, space, 250px, semicolon, then left, colon, space, 450px, semicolon. Close the block. So I think all you have to do is look at this and be like, okay, it's 250px from the top, which moves it down. And then 450px from the left, which moves it right, so you can imagine them at the top. I think they're all on the top left. Is that what it said? They start at the top left. That's like the something origin or something, I can't remember. That's the same as in this language. Okay, so there's a diagram for that. Then it says so it says that the layout of the other page elements are not affected by relative positioning. They will still occupy the original positions on the rendered page, but as if the object had never been moved at all. So okay, I don't understand this. I'm not sure if that means that they move or they don't move, so you have to try that and see. Relative positioning is sometimes used when the designer wants to tweak the page layout by slightly moving an object from its default location to a new location that fits the overall page design better. If no top, right, bottom, or left values are specified with relative positioning, they're assumed. Values are 0 and the element will not be shifted at all. Okay, so the last one is absolute positioning. Absolute positioning. Place an element at specific coordinates within a container where the top property indicates the position of the container's top edge. The right property sets up position of the right edge. I'm not sure if I messed up, so let me just read that again. So absolute positioning, place an element at specific coordinates within a container where the top property indicates the position of the element's top edge. The right property sets the position of the right edge. The bottom property sets the bottom edge position. And the left property sets the position of the left edge. the right property sets the position of the right edge, the bottom property sets the bottom edge position, and the left property sets the position of the left edge, so it's exactly the same. To understand what's the difference. For example, the following style drill places the header element 620 pixels from the top edge of the container. 30 pixels on the left edge of the container. It looks exactly the same, so I'm not sure why. Instead of div here, they just use header. So header, open up log position, colon space, absolute, semicolon, then top, colon space, 620px, semicolon, left, colon space, 30px, semicolon. So that's pretty much it. Okay, so there's a little bit more here, maybe. Yeah, there is, okay. There's another 2 pages. So to place an object with absolute position, use either the top left coordinates or the bottom right. So these are, to place an object with absolute position, use either the top / left coordinates or the bottom / right coordinates, but you don't use all 4 coordinates at the same time, because that would confuse the browser. Okay. For example, an object cannot be positioned along both the left and right edge of the container simultaneously. Supposed to be cool today. There's the massive. Yeah, I thought it said when. Let me have a look at the screenshots. 1 sec. I was looking at something for a sec. Okay, so it said that weather was going to be. Oh. Remember, it's saying -11 somewhere. Okay, it's always been Thursday. Okay. So not till Thursday. It's supposed to be cold. Okay, so. I have to get the other blanket out. Sure it was here. I think here, so as with floating, an element absolute position takes an element out of the normal document flow, with subsequent elements moving into the space previously occupied by the element. This can result in an absolutely positioned object. Overlapping other page elements. The interpretation of the coordinates of an absolutely positioned object are all based on the edges of the element's container. Thus, the browser needs to know where the object's container is before it can absolutely position objects within it. If the container has been placed using the position property set to relative or absolute, the container's location is known and the coordinate values are based on the edges of the container. example, the following style replaces the article element at a coordinate that is 50 pixels from the top edge of the section X element and 20 pixels from the left edge. So section open, this is the code section open a block position, colon space relative, semicolon, close a block, then section is greater than article. So I think it means the article within the section, open a block position, I'm not sure if that's actually correct, so then open a block position, colon space, absolute semicolon, then top, colon space, 50px, semicolon, then left, colon space, 20px, semicolon. So note that you don't have to define coordinates for the section element as long as you've set its position to relative. Difficulty search from the container has not been set to using relative or absolute positioning. In this case, the browser has no content for replacing. So the browser has no context for replacing an object within the container using absolute positioning. As a result, the browser must go up a level. Container. Sorry, go up a level in the hierarchy of page elements, that is, to the container's container. If that container has been placed with absolute or relative positioning, then any object nested within it can be placed with absolute position. For example, in the following style rule, the position of the article element is measured from the edges of the body element, not the section element. So we have here the code. So body, open a block position, colon space, absolute, semicolon, close the block. Then body is greater than section. Then open a block position, colon space, static, semicolon, close block. Then body. So we have the next part, which is body is greater than section is greater than article is greater than position, colon space, absolute, semicolon, and top, colon space, 50px, semicolon, and left, colon space, 20px, semicolon, close the block. So I think that's saying that the section within the body and the article within the section. I think I forgot. It says tip if all the objects within the container are placed using absolute position, the container will have no context and will collapse. So proceeding in this fashion, the browser will continue to go up the hierarchy of elements until it finds a container that has been placed with absolute or relative positioning, or it reaches the root HTML element. If it reaches the HTML element, the coordinates of any absolutely positioned objects are measured from the edges of the browser window itself. The figure shows how the placement of the same object can differ based on which container supplies the context for the top and left value. So there's a diagram here. You gotta understand the diagram. Okay, so it says absolute positioning from the inner container, absolute positioning from the outer container. Okay. Coordinates can be expressed as in percentages as well as pixels. Percentages are used for flexible layouts in which the object should be positioned in relation to the width or height of its container. Thus the following style rule places the article element halfway down and 30% to the right of the top left corner of its container. Was that more so a fluid layout? I'm not sure. We have, for example, article, open a block, position, colon space, absolute, semicolon, then top, colon space, 50%, semicolon, then left, colon space, 30%, semicolon. So the last sentence is, as container of the article changes in width or height, the article's position will automatically change to match. There's one little thing here that said, because the inner container has not been placed using relative or absolute positioning, the context shifts up the hierarchy to the outer container. So that's until you actually do the codes, obviously you won't really understand, but it actually doesn't seem too hard to understand. Let's just see. So that's the end of this topic for chapter 3. So now you just have to start doing the codes again.